The afternoon sun beat down on the parking lot outside Fort Reynolds Medical Center as Lieutenant Commander Kate Morrison limped toward the entrance, her left leg still wrapped in bandages beneath her combat fatigues. Every step sent a sharp reminder through her body of the explosion that had nearly killed her 3 weeks ago in Afghanistan. But pain was something Kate had learned to ignore a long time ago. She'd been a Navy helicopter pilot for 12 years, flying extraction missions in some of the most dangerous territories on Earth. The flight that ended her deployment hadn't been her first close call, but it was the one that finally grounded her. The Taliban rocket had torn through her Seahawk's tail rotor, just as she was pulling a team of wounded Marines from a hot zone. She'd managed to set the bird down hard, but controlled, saving every soul on board before the aircraft became an inferno. The cost was 3 cracked ribs, a shattered knee, and burns along her left side that still made her wince when she moved too quickly. Today was supposed to be simple. Pick up her medical records, attend a mandatory evaluation, and begin the long process of fighting her way back to flight status. Kate had no intention of accepting a medical discharge. Flying wasn't just what she did. It was who she was taught. As she approached the building's entrance, a group of 6 Navy SEALs emerged, their conversation loud and animated. Kate recognized the type immediately fresh from deployment, still running on adrenaline and brotherhood, that particular swagger that came from surviving hell together. She'd flown men like these dozens of times, pulled them from situations that would haunt anyone else's nightmares. The one in front, a stocky man with a thick neck and close-cropped hair, nearly walked straight into her. Kate stopped short, steadying herself against the handrail. "Watch it, ma'am," he said, the title dripping with casual dismissal. His name tape read Holland. He looked her up and down, his gaze stopping on her bandaged leg and the way she favored her right side. "Medical wing's that way if you're lost." "I know where I'm going," Kate replied evenly, moving to step around him. Another SEAL, taller with a sun-weathered face, chuckled. "Dave, leave the desk jockey alone. She probably just twisted an ankle filing paperwork." The group laughed, that easy mockery of men who'd never considered that the woman in front of them might have seen combat. To them, she was just another officer who'd never heard a shot fired in anger, wearing a uniform she hadn't earned through the same crucible they had. Actually, a third SEAL added, his voice carrying that distinctive edge of someone showing off for his brothers. "Shouldn't you salute Lieutenant Commander Holland here? That's proper protocol, isn't it, ma'am?" His grin was sharp and mean. "Oh wait, maybe you're too injured from your tough desk job." Kate felt the familiar heat rise in her chest, not anger at the insult itself, but at the bottomless ignorance behind it. She'd heard it before, though usually not quite so brazen. In 12 years of service, she'd proven herself 100 times over. And yet here she was again, being reduced to assumptions and stereotypes by men who knew nothing about her. She met Holland's eyes directly. "Excuse me," she said quietly, and moved past them into the building. Behind her, she heard one of them mutter, "Probably got hurt tripping over her own feet. And they wonder why we don't want women in combat roles." Kate's hand tightened on the door handle, her knuckles going white. She'd flown through enemy fire. She'd brought dying men home to their families. She'd pulled the trigger when it needed pulling and kept her crew alive when every instrument was screaming failure. And here, in a parking lot at a medical center on American soil, she was reduced to a punchline by men who should have known better. The lobby was mercifully cool and quiet. Kate made her way to the elevator, her leg throbbing with each step. The face in the polished metal doors showed someone tired, worn down not just by injury, but by the weight of constant dismissal. At 34, she had more combat flight hours than most pilots would accumulate in a full career. She'd received a Distinguished Flying Cross and 2 Air Medals. Her call sign, Angel, had been earned pulling off impossible rescues, but none of that mattered to men. who only saw the surface. The elevator climbed to the 3rd floor, and Kate stepped out into the administrative wing. Commander Patricia Hughes, the base's senior medical officer, was expecting her. The older woman had been a flight surgeon for 20 years and had seen every kind of injury the service could inflict on its people. "Kate," she greeted warmly, standing from behind her desk. "Come in, sit down. How's the leg?" "Getting better," Kate replied, lowering herself carefully into the chair. "Still hurts like hell, but the physical therapist says I'm ahead of schedule." Hughes nodded, pulling up Kate's file on her computer. Her expression grew serious. "I've reviewed all your records, including the incident report from your last mission. What you did out there, getting that aircraft down with a destroyed tail rotor, that was exceptional flying. I did what anyone would do." "No," Hughes said firmly. "You did what maybe 5 pilots in the entire Navy could do." Captain Nelson called me personally. He wanted to make sure I understood exactly what happened out there, in case the official report didn't capture it. She paused. "Those Marines you saved, Kate, every single one of them made it home. 3 of them have children. That means something." Kate felt her throat tighten. She didn't fly for medals or recognition. She flew because when everything went wrong, someone needed to bring the people home. That was the job. "The board meets next week to determine your flight status," Hughes continued. "I'm going to recommend full clearance once you complete physical therapy. But Kate, I need you to be realistic about the timeline. You're looking at 6 months minimum, possibly longer." 6 months felt like forever. The physical therapy sessions were brutal. Every morning at 0-5-30, Kate reported to the base rehabilitation center where a sadistic former Marine named Sergeant Carson put her through exercises that left her gasping and drenched in sweat. Her knee had to be completely rebuilt. The muscles and ligaments were trained to bear weight, to flex and extend, to handle the stress of long flights and emergency situations. But Kate welcomed the pain. It meant progress. It meant getting back to the cockpit. On the 4th day, as she was finishing a particularly grueling set of leg presses, she noticed a commotion near the entrance. The same group of SEALs from the medical center had arrived for their own training session. Holland, the stocky one who'd nearly run her over, was laughing with his teammates as they claimed the weight section. Carson, who missed nothing, glanced at Kate. "You know those boys?" "We've met," Kate said neutrally, focusing on her form. "SEAL Team 7, Carson commented. "Just got back from a rough deployment. Lost a couple good men over there." His voice carried the weight of understanding, the particular respect warriors held for those who'd seen real combat. Kate softened slightly. Grief and trauma made people act in ways they wouldn't otherwise. It didn't excuse the disrespect, but it explained it. Still, she kept her distance, finishing her session on the opposite side of the facility. Over the next 2 weeks, an uneasy rhythm developed. The SEALs trained in the mornings, same as Kate. They largely ignored her, which was fine. She wasn't there to make friends. But occasionally, she'd catch snippets of conversation missions discussed in vague terms. The brotherhood of men who'd survived together. The dark humor that kept trauma at bay. One morning, Holland approached the water fountain where Kate was refilling her bottle. He didn't acknowledge her presence, just filled his own container and walked away. But as he turned, she heard him mutter to a teammate, "Still can't believe they're letting desk riders use the combat PT center. This place used to mean something." The teammate, a younger SEAL with a Louisiana accent, glanced back at Kate. "Maybe she earned it, man." "Yeah, right," Holland snorted. "Earned it doing what? PowerPoint presentations?" Kate's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Engaging would only make it worse. These men had decided who she was without knowing a single fact about her service. Arguing wouldn't change minds that closed. That afternoon, Kate had an appointment with Captain Richard Nelson, her squadron commander. Nelson was a decorated pilot himself, a Vietnam veteran who'd flown rescue missions under fire and understood what it meant to bring people home from impossible situations. His office overlooked the flight line, where helicopters took off and landed in precise intervals. Kate watched a Seahawk lift off, her heart aching with longing. "I know that look," Nelson said gently, settling into his chair. "I had it myself when I was grounded for 8 months after taking shrapnel in my shoulder. How did you deal with it, sir?" "Poorly," he admitted with a slight smile. "Drove my wife crazy, snapped at everyone, felt sorry for myself. Then a wise old chief reminded me that being a pilot wasn't just about stick time. It was about judgment, about understanding the mission, about being someone others could trust when everything went to hell." He leaned forward. "You've got that, Morrison. You've always had it." "The SEALs don't think so," Kate said before she could stop herself. Nelson's eyebrows rose. "Team 7? Holland's bunch?" She nodded, immediately regretting bringing it up. "Those boys have been through hell," Nelson said carefully. "They lost their officer and another teammate on their last op, ambushed during an extraction. The pilot who was supposed to pull them out got spooked by ground fire and aborted." He paused, letting that sink in. "They fought their way to a secondary LZ, but by then, the damage was done. So yeah, they've got some issues with trusting people they don't know." Kate felt a chill. An aborted extraction. The worst nightmare of any ground team calling for help and having it not come. She understood their anger better now, even if it was misdirected. "That doesn't give them the right to disrespect you," Nelson continued. "But it might explain why they're especially hard on someone they perceive as not having earned their place. In their minds, everyone needs to prove themselves in fire." "I have proven myself," Kate said quietly. "Dozens of times. I know you have, but they don't. And that's the problem with assumptions, isn't it? They let you stay ignorant while feeling righteous." The next day, Kate arrived early for PT, hoping to avoid the SEALs entirely. But Carson had other plans. "Morrison, you're partnering up today. Need you spotting on the bench press." Her partner turned out to be the younger SEAL from Louisiana, the one who'd suggested she might have earned her place. Up close, his name tape read Martin. He nodded at her respectfully. "Ma'am." "Lieutenant Commander," she corrected gently. "But Kate's fine here." They worked in silence for several minutes, Kate spotting while Martin pressed heavy weights with controlled precision. Finally, he spoke. "Sorry about Holland and the others. They're good men, but they're dealing with some stuff." "I heard about your deployment," Kate said. "I'm sorry for your losses." Martin set the bar down, sitting up to look at her directly. "You know what happened. Captain Nelson mentioned an extraction got aborted. Your team had to fight to a secondary LZ." His jaw tightened. "Lieutenant Phillips and Petty Officer Garza died because a pilot decided his own skin was worth more than bringing us home. So yeah, some of the guys have trust issues with people they don't know in combat situations." Kate understood. In their position, she might feel the same way. "For what it's worth, I've never aborted an extraction." "Never will." Martin studied her for a long moment. "You fly?" 12 years. Seahawks mostly. Combat search and rescue, special operation support." Something shifted in his expression, not quite respect, but reconsideration. "You deployed?" 5 times. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Wherever they needed pilots willing to fly into hot zones. She met his gaze. "I brought everyone home, Martin. Every single time. Until the mission that put me here." He was quiet, processing. "Then, what happened?" "Taliban rocket took out my tail rotor during an extraction. 6 wounded Marines, 30 seconds of flight time before complete failure. I got them down hard but alive. The bird burned. I got banged up. but everyone walked away. Martin's eyes widened slightly. "Your angel." The call sign, spoken aloud, hit her like a physical thing. "That's what they call me." "Holy hell," he breathed. "You're the pilot from Kandahar. The one who—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Ma'am, I'm sorry." Word spread quickly among the SEALs after Martin's revelation. Kate noticed the change in how they looked at her. Not quite respect yet, but a grudging reconsideration. Holland remained cold, his distrust too deeply rooted in loss and anger to shift easily. But the others had begun to nod when they saw her, small acknowledgments that she existed as something more than their assumptions. Kate didn't push it. She continued her rehabilitation with fierce determination, her knee growing stronger each day. The physical pain was manageable. What hurt more was watching helicopters take off without her. Hearing mission briefings she wasn't part of. Feeling disconnected from the purpose that had defined her adult life. 6 weeks into her recovery, Commander Hughes cleared her for light duty. Kate was assigned to the operations center, coordinating flight schedules and logistics. It was desk work, exactly what those SEALs had assumed she'd always done. But she approached it with the same intensity she brought to flying. Every helicopter that launched was someone's lifeline. Every mission required precise planning. There were no small jobs when lives depended on getting things right. One evening, as Kate was finishing paperwork in the operations center, an alarm shattered the quiet. The watch officer grabbed the emergency radio, his face draining of color as he listened. "Sir, we have a situation," he called to the duty officer. "SEAL Team 7 on a training exercise in the mountain range. One man down with a severe injury, possible spinal damage. They need immediate medical evacuation, but the civilian air ambulance can't reach them. Terrain's too rough and visibility's dropping fast." Kate's pulse quickened. She moved to the communication station, listening to the details coming through. The team was 15 miles into the mountain wilderness, accessible only by helicopter, and a storm front was moving in fast. In 2 hours, the area would be completely socked in with zero visibility. The duty officer, a young lieutenant Kate didn't know well, looked panicked. "Who do we have available?" "Lieutenant Harris is on standby," the watch officer reported. "But sir, he's only been flying in this area for 3 months. Those mountains in bad weather. I know the risks," the lieutenant snapped. "But what choice do we have?" Kate stepped forward. "Sir, request permission to take the mission." He looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Morrison, you're not cleared for flight duty." "I'm cleared for light duty, which includes cockpit operations in emergency situations." "Check the regulations, sir." Commander Hughes signed off on it 2 days ago. It was a technicality, a loophole she'd specifically requested in case something like this happened. Hughes had been skeptical, but ultimately agreed. Kate's knowledge and experience were too valuable to completely sideline. The lieutenant hesitated. Outside, thunder rumbled. Time was bleeding away. "Lieutenant Harris is a good pilot," Kate said quietly, "but he doesn't know those mountains." "I do. I've flown search and rescue in that terrain a dozen times. I know every ridge, every wind pattern, every safe approach vector." She paused. "That team needs someone who can get in and out fast in deteriorating conditions. I'm that someone. You're an E, can handle sitting in a cockpit operating controls." "Sir, I wouldn't volunteer if I couldn't do the job. But that team is running out of time." The watch officer pulled up Kate's service record on his screen. His eyes widened. "Sir, Lieutenant Commander Morrison has over 2,000 flight hours in combat search and rescue. 47 high-risk extractions. She's qualified for this." The lieutenant looked between them, clearly wrestling with regulations versus reality. Finally, he grabbed the phone. "Get me Commander Hughes, now." 5 minutes later, Kate was suiting up in the Flightline ready room. Hughes had approved the mission with one condition. Kate would take a co-pilot and a flight medic. And if her knee gave her any trouble, she'd hand over controls immediately. The co-pilot turned out to be Lieutenant Harris himself, the young pilot originally slated for the mission. He looked relieved when Kate climbed into the left seat. "Ma'am, I've heard about you. Glad you're taking lead on this." "Stay sharp," Kate replied, running through her pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. "Weather's going to get rough. I'll need you watching instruments while I focus on navigation." The Seahawk lifted off in the gathering darkness, its rotors beating against increasingly hostile air. Rain began to spatter the windscreen as they climbed toward the mountains. Kate felt her body settle into familiar rhythms, hands on the controls, eyes scanning instruments and terrain, mind calculating wind speeds and approach angles. This was where she belonged. This was who she was. "Team 7, this is Angel," she transmitted. "En route to your position. ETA 20 minutes. How's your injured man?" Holland's voice came back, tight with stress. "Angel, this is Team 7 actual. Petty Officer Martin has a back injury, possible spinal. He can't be moved without proper extraction. We need that bird now, weather's closing in fast." "Martin," the young SEAL who'd been the first to reconsider his assumptions about her. Kate's grip tightened on the controls. "Understood, 7. I'm coming for you. What's your LZ situation?" "Limited. We're on a ridge, barely enough room to set down. Trees on 3 sides, drop off to the east. Winds gusting hard." Kate checked her navigation display. She knew exactly where they were, brutal location, even in good weather. In a storm, it would be nearly impossible. "Copy that. We'll make it work." Harris glanced at her. "Ma'am, that's barely a landing zone. In these conditions." "I know," Kate said calmly. "But those men don't have another option. So we give them what they need." The mountains rose ahead, dark shapes against darker sky. Lightning flickered through clouds, illuminating jagged peaks and narrow valleys. The helicopter bucked in the wind, but Kate's hands remained steady, making constant tiny adjustments to keep them on course. Ahead, she saw lights, the team's signal markers. The ridge was exactly as bad as Holland had described. Maybe 15 feet of clear space, surrounded by obstacles, winds gusting at 30 knots. Kate circled once, analyzing angles and approaches. 7, Angel. Your LZ is hot. I'm coming in from the west. One approach, no second chances. Have your man ready to load the instant we touch down." "Roger." "Angel, we're ready." Kate began her approach, fighting wind that tried to push her off course, rain that obscured visibility, and terrain that left zero margin for error. Harris called out altitude and airspeed, his voice steady despite the circumstances. The flight medic secured equipment, ready to move fast. 50 feet. The helicopter shuddered in a wind gust. 30 feet. Kate compensated, holding position through sheer will and skill. 10 feet. The landing zone filled her windscreen, impossibly small. The skids touched down on solid rock. "Go, go, go!" Kate shouted. The SEALs moved like ghosts in the darkness, carrying Martin on a spine board. Kate held the helicopter steady against wind that wanted to lift them off the ridge, her knees screaming from the constant pedal pressure. The loadmaster's voice crackled in Kate's headset. "Injured aboard. We're secure." "Lifting off," Kate replied, pulling collective and applying power. The Seahawk clawed its way up from the ridge, fighting wind that seemed determined to smash them back down. For 5 endless seconds, they hovered at the edge of control, the helicopter shaking violently. Then they cleared the trees and Kate nosed forward, gaining altitude and airspeed. Behind her, the flight medic worked on Martin, stabilizing his spine and starting in 4. Holland's voice came through the radio, rough with emotion. "Angel, This is 7 actual. We're clear. Thank you. Just doing my job, Kate replied, but her hands were shaking now, adrenaline and pain finally breaking through her focus. Her knee felt like it was on fire, and the storm had gotten worse. Lightning struck a peak to their left, close enough to light up the cockpit. Harris saw her wince. "Ma'am, I can take controls." "Negative." "I've got it." She did have it, barely, fighting through pain and turbulence with every bit of skill she'd accumulated over 12 years. The base was 18 minutes away. She could last 18 minutes. The minutes crawled past. Kate flew by instinct and instrument, her vision narrowing to the essential information: altitude, heading, airspeed. Everything else faded away. Harris called out checkpoints, his voice an anchor in the chaos. 5 miles out, he announced. "Medical team is standing by." Kate keyed her radio. "Tower, this is Angel requesting priority landing. Medical emergency aboard." "Roger, Angel. You're cleared for immediate approach. All traffic is holding. Medical is ready at the landing pad." The base lights appeared through the rain like a constellation. Kate lined up her approach, forced herself to focus through the pain, and brought the Seahawk down with a gentleness that belied the storm around them. The moment the skids touched concrete, she sagged in her seat. "Harris, you've got the shutdown," she managed. "I need a minute." The medical team rushed aboard, transferring Martin to a waiting ambulance. The other SEALs climbed out, Holland last. He stopped at the cockpit door, looking up at Kate. Their eyes met, and something passed between them: acknowledgement. Respect, understanding. Then he was gone. Following his teammate to the medical center, Kate made it through the post-flight procedures on autopilot, documenting every detail with mechanical precision. Commander Hughes appeared as she was finishing the paperwork, her expression unreadable. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen," Hughes said finally. "Possibly both." "Martin needed extraction," Kate replied simply. "I was the best qualified pilot available. Your knee?" "Will be fine after some ice and elevation." It wouldn't be fine for several days, and they both knew it. Kate had probably set her recovery back by weeks. But Martin was alive. That was the only calculation that mattered. Hughes studied her for a long moment. "Captain Nelson wants to see you in his office." "Tomorrow, 0800. Kate nodded, too exhausted to worry about what that meant. She limped back to her quarters through rain that had finally started to ease, every step in agony. Inside, she collapsed on her bed, still in her flight suit, and let the pain wash over her. But beneath the physical hurt was something else: satisfaction, purpose, the knowledge that she'd done what she was meant to do. The next morning, Kate presented herself at Captain Nelson's office, her knee swollen and her body stiff. The waiting area was empty, except for one person: Commander Holland, the SEAL team leader, still in his combat fatigues. He stood when she entered. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison." "Commander Holland," she replied neutrally. "I wanted to apologize," he said, the words clearly difficult. "For the things I said, the assumptions I made. I was wrong. Martin's alive because of you, because you had the skills and the courage to fly into that hell when no one else could." He paused. "You're the kind of pilot we needed on our last deployment. The kind who doesn't leave people behind." Kate felt something tight in her chest loosen. "Your team lost people because a pilot failed you. That wasn't about gender or qualifications. That was about character. I'm sorry that happened." "So am I," Holland said quietly. "But last night reminded me that the uniform is what matters. Not who's wearing it. What you can do. Not what we assume you can't." He extended his hand. "Thank you for bringing my man home." She shook it firmly. "That's the job. That's always the job." Captain Nelson's door opened. "Morrison, Holland." "Come in." The office was more crowded than Kate expected. Commander Hughes was there, along with Admiral Patricia Keene, the base commander. Kate snapped to attention, her injured knee protesting. "At ease," Admiral Keene said, a voice carrying the authority of 30 years in the Navy. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison, last night you violated medical restrictions to fly a high-risk rescue mission in dangerous conditions." Kate's heart sank. She'd known there would be consequences, but she'd do it again in a heartbeat. "You also," Keene continued, "saved the life of Petty Officer 3rd Class Derek Martin and demonstrated exactly the kind of skill, judgment, and courage we need in our pilots." She picked up a folder from Nelson's desk. "I've reviewed your service record, Morrison. 47 combat rescues, 5 deployments, a distinguished flying cross, and last night makes 48. Kate blinked, not trusting herself to speak. "Commander Hughes has reevaluated your medical status," Keene said. "While last night's mission has set back your physical recovery, it proved beyond doubt that you retain full cognitive and operational capability. You're cleared to resume limited flight duties immediately, with full clearance anticipated in 3 months rather than 6. The words took a moment to penetrate. Kate felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, Admiral." "Don't thank me. You earned it. Every bit of it." Keene's expression softened slightly. "The Navy needs pilots like you, Morrison. People who understand that the mission isn't about glory or recognition. It's about bringing our people home, no matter what that costs." Holland spoke up. "Admiral, if I may, Team 7 would like to request Lieutenant Commander Morrison as our primary extraction pilot for future operations." Keene raised an eyebrow. "That's high praise, Commander." "It's earned praise, ma'am," Holland replied, looking at Kate. "We trust her, completely." 3 months later, Kate stood on the flight line at dawn, watching the sun paint the eastern sky in shades of gold and pink. Her knee had healed, stronger than before thanks to relentless physical therapy. She'd spent the past weeks flying training missions, rebuilding muscle memory, and proving to herself and everyone else that she was ready. Today was her final evaluation flight. Past this, and she'd be fully cleared for combat operations. The Seahawk waited on the tarmac, its rotors already turning in the pre-flight warm-up. Kate walked toward it with steady confidence, her flight suit crisp, her helmet under her arm. She wasn't nervous. This was who she was. This was what she did. Captain Nelson met her at the aircraft. "Ready?" "More than ready, sir." "Good, because your evaluation scenario is a challenging one. Multiple casualty extraction from hostile terrain, mechanical failures, deteriorating weather. Everything we can throw at you." Kate smiled. "So just another Tuesday." The evaluation lasted 3 hours. Kate flew through every scenario they designed, handling emergencies with calm precision, making split-second decisions that balanced risk and reward, and demonstrating exactly why she'd earned her call sign. When she finally brought the helicopter down for the last time, her hands were steady and her mind was clear. The evaluation board convened immediately. 20 minutes later, Commander Hughes emerged from the ready room, a rare smile on her face. "Welcome back to full flight status, Lieutenant Commander. You're cleared for all operations." Kate felt something that had been tight in her chest for months finally release. She was whole again. She was home. That evening, SEAL Team 7 threw a celebration at the base club. It was ostensibly for Martin, who'd made a full recovery and was returning to active duty. But when Kate arrived, Holland raised his beer. "To Angel, the pilot who proves that the best person for the job is the best person, period." The room erupted in cheers. Martin crossed to her, walking without even a trace of a limp. "Ma'am, I never properly thanked you. I've got a wife and a baby daughter. They've got a husband and a father because of you. You'd have done the same for me," Kate replied. That's what we do for each other. Over the following weeks, Kate flew dozens of missions. Training exercises, real-world emergencies, and eventually, a deployment notification. SEAL Team 7 was heading back overseas, and they'd specifically requested her as their primary aviation support. The night before they shipped out, Kate found herself on the flight line again, looking up at the stars. Holland approached quietly, standing beside her in companionable silence. Nervous? He asked finally. No, Kate said honestly. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm glad you're with us, Holland said. I mean that. The guys, they trust you completely. That's rare. It's earned through action, through proving yourself when everything's on the line. You've done that. So have all of you, Kate replied. That's why we'll bring each other home. No matter what. The deployment was everything Kate expected. Dangerous, exhausting, and absolutely essential. She flew missions that pushed her skills to the limit, inserted teams into hostile territory, and pulled them out when things went wrong. And things did go wrong, frequently, because that was the nature of combat operations. 6 weeks into the deployment, Team 7 found themselves in a situation that had gone from bad to desperate. An intelligence operation had been compromised, and they were pinned down in an urban area with enemy fighters closing in from all sides. The extraction plan had fallen apart. The secondary LZ was under fire. They needed a miracle. Kate was 50 miles away when the call came through. She didn't hesitate. Team 7, this is Angel. I'm en route. Give me a rooftop location. Holland's voice was tight with controlled urgency. Angel, the LZ is hot. Very hot. We've got RPGs and heavy machine gun fire. I can't ask you to come into this. You're not asking, Kate replied, banking hard and pushing her Seahawk to maximum speed. I'm telling you, find me a roof and mark it. I'm 3 minutes out. Angel, you don't understand. Holland, I understand perfectly. You need extraction. I'm bringing extraction. Mark your LZ and be ready to move fast. This is happening. She could hear the emotion in his voice. Roger, Angel. LZ marked. We'll be ready. The city appeared ahead, smoke rising from multiple locations. Kate could see tracer fire stitching through the air, hear the radio chatter of enemy fighters organizing. The rooftop Holland had marked was in the center of the hottest zone, surrounded by buildings filled with hostiles. 3 minutes, she transmitted. Get your people ready. She came in fast and low, using the buildings as cover, her co-pilot calling out threats. Bullets pinged off the helicopter's armor. An RPG streaked past, missing by feet. Kate held her course, focused completely on the rooftop ahead. The SEALs were visible now, providing covering fire from their position. Kate lined up her approach, fighting wind and enemy fire and her own racing heartbeat. This was the moment that defined everything. The reason she'd spent 12 years training. The purpose behind every sacrifice. The Seahawk touched down on the rooftop. And Team 7 moved like water, loading aboard with practiced efficiency. Kate held position, her door gunner returning fire, the helicopter shaking from impacts. Last man aboard. The loadmaster shouted. Kate pulled collective and lifted off, climbing away from the rooftop in a spiral that minimized their exposure. More tracers followed them up, but they were gaining altitude and speed. They were going to make it. Angel, this is 7 actual, Holland transmitted. We're clear. All personnel accounted for. You crazy. Beautiful pilot, you did it. Kate allowed herself a smile. Just bringing you home, Commander. That's the job. Back at base, as the team climbed out of the helicopter, Holland approached Kate's cockpit. You know what the difference is between a good pilot and a great one? What's that? A good pilot knows how to fly. A great pilot knows why. He looked at her seriously. You know why, Angel. You've always known why. The deployment continued for 4 more months. Kate flew mission after mission, building a reputation that spread beyond just Team 7. Other units requested her specifically. Other pilots studied her techniques. She became exactly what she'd always been meant to be, a pilot who brought people home, no matter the cost. When she finally returned stateside, there was a ceremony. Admiral Keane presented her with another Air Medal, her third, for exceptional performance under combat conditions. But the moment that mattered most came afterward, when the members of SEAL Team 7 stood at attention and saluted her, not because regulations required it, but because respect demanded it. Kate had spent her career proving herself, fighting against assumptions and prejudice and the casual dismissal of people who couldn't see past their own limitations. She'd been wounded, mocked, and underestimated, but she'd never stopped being exactly who she was, a pilot with the skill and courage to fly into hell itself, if that's what bringing people home required. Years later, when young female pilots asked her for advice, Kate always told them the same thing. Your worth isn't determined by what others assume about you. It's determined by what you do when everything is on the line, when the mission matters more than your safety, when someone's life depends on you being exactly who you are. Be that person. Always be that person. And every time a Seahawk lifted off from Fort Reynolds, carrying hope into dangerous places, someone would look up and say, "That's Angel. She'd bring them home." Because she always did. That was the job. That was always the job, and nobody did it better. The end.